What you see here is a map of the political situation of Roman Britain around 410. That's near the end of Roman rule. And what you see here is the region Valentia. And you have two walls, the Hadrian Wall, constructed by Emperor Hadrian, and the Wall of Antony, that was constructed by Emperor Antonius Pius. Now, when you look at this map, you'll notice one thing. Roman Britain was highly urbanized, had many towns, you had many roads, but you also had many military camps. Around the end of Roman rule, you had around 125,000 military personnel, including the wives and children and assistants of the military. Each military camp had around 10,000 troops, so you had around 60,000 official troops or legionaries over here. You also had auxiliary troops, which were like local police patrols. So it was highly urbanized and securitized, if you want to call it like that. But why? Roman Britain had a population of around 2.8 to 3 million people, and near the end of the Roman rule at around 3.6 million people. Actually 3.4, 3.5 if you take out the military personnel, which were people all over the world. Londinium, today we call it London, became a multi-ethnic, or you can say a multicultural city, which was also the capital of Roman Britain. And don't forget Ireland, which also had Roman towns, was governed from Eblana today we call Dublin, and was subjected to Londinium, London. So when you look at the situation carefully, why did they construct two walls? And why over 60,000 legionaries? Why all that military presence? I told you before that all wars are hoaxes since the establishment of this Apollonistic world order. And the rulers of the Roman Empire were Apollonists. In that time they openly worshipped Apollo. You had statues of that demon throughout the Roman world, and also outside of the Roman world, because all world leaders at the time were part of this Greek cult. So I'm going to explain to you why the Romans militarized Britain like this over time. And to do that, I may not even have to use a map, but okay, let's just do it. Let's go to where's. Bear with me for a moment. Just going to open it in my browser this time. Just want to use Google Maps to show something to you. When you look at the map, Britain is removed from the Mediterranean, and the Roman world was centered around the Mediterranean. For mainland Europe, apart from Scandinavia, it was obvious for them to be connected to the economy of the Mediterranean. Also for the people living in the north of Africa and what they call the Middle East. But for the tribes living on the British Isles, what was the benefit for them belonging to the Roman Empire, for being connected with the economy of the Mediterranean? In the early phase of Roman rule, there were conflicts between the Britons at the time and the rest of mainland Europe. Why? First of all, the government was seated in Rome, you had a governor in Londinium, and, well, communication was a bit slow, and the politics was centered around the Mediterranean, especially east of the Mediterranean, where most of the economic activity took place. So that means that the policies over here have to be directed in the interest of the east of the Mediterranean. And that will annoy the people living over here. So the Romans had to come up with a psychological operation to appease the Britons. And Adrian had a perfect solution for this. Well, perfect according to the Romans at least. They constructed a wall but before constructing the wall they had these false flag operations in which they claimed that bandits from the north came all the way to the south to attack Roman civilization. So after several false flag attacks, the people here had enough and he wanted a solution. And Adrian, the emperor, was behind those false flags, constructed a big wall to keep the people safe. A later emperor constructed another wall. So eventually the Romans had a buffer zone. So what was the purpose of this buffer zone? To convince the British people that there was a war going on for their civilization. And because you had soldiers from all over the world coming to defend Roman Britain, the people felt appreciated and included in the Roman world. And that's how the Romans appeased them. Because you saw Egyptians who were black, you saw Syrians, Arabs, Israelites. Yes, you also had Israelites in the Roman army. You had people from Spain. You even had, I'm not saying that they were part of the Roman military, but you had merchants that came to trade their goods. You had merchants all the way from South Asia, for example, coming to the Roman Empire. Some even ended up in Roman Britain. So, because the Britons at the time were exposed to all these ethnicities, who all worked together to maintain Roman civilization, they were at peace for a while. So they felt Roman as being part of the Roman civilization. That's why you had that buffer zone, Valentia. There were no real enemies attacking the Roman world because, first of all, the population in Caledonia was very low. Hibernia, which they call island, was economically completely dependent on the Roman economy in Britain. So none of the Caledonians had any interest in a conflict with Rome because they were isolated. They had no other place to go. So who in the right mind from Caledonia at the time would attack Roman civilization? And why would the Caledonians risk being cut off from the world like this? Just think about it. This Valentia was a buffer zone where a fake war was going on to convince the people here that they were under threat and that they needed the Roman presence. And at the same time, this also exposed them to all the ethnicities within the Roman Empire, so they felt included. It was a psychological operation. And that kept the people distracted from noticing that most of the finances in the Roman Empire was spent in the Greek East. You had the Latin West. They still spoke Greek in the Latin West, but it was called the Latin West. And you had the Greek East. In the East, so the Greeks were the dominant ones. In the West, you had the Greek ethnicity from Rome, which were called Romans. They were dominant over there. The population in the west of the Roman Empire was, was low compared to the east. Most of the finances were spent on the east eventually, but the people in Roman Britain were distracted from that because there was a war going on over here. Now, why am I showing you this? Because I want you to understand that the pagan rulers of the world today, who run the militaries of the world, they're following the same pattern as the Romans did, because they're Apollonists too. They all worship Apollo, they all worship the beast. Today the military has different weapons, like we have guns, we have tanks, we have an air force. When it comes down to it, they all follow the same psychological strategies of the Greco-Roman world. The reason I'm showing this image here, this was a Roman settlement in Roman Britain. Well, actually this is a reconstruction of how it looked like. If all these towns had firm walls around them, then why were those walls needed? Aren't these, why were those two large walls? Aren't those city walls sufficient? That's to show you that it was all a psychological operation. And all wars are psychological operations. All wars are hoaxes. I'm telling you as it is. This may sound very weird to you, but all wars are orchestrated events in which the causalities, so not only in which the not causalities, in which the deaths are real. In this case, the death of the soldiers are real, and the mourning of the relatives of the soldiers are real, but the wars itself are fake. Those wars, those psychological operations are to distract the population to keep them in a state of anxiety. That's what it's all about. I just want to share this with you. Not much has changed in how the world is ruled. That's it for now. Agree with Christ and be at peace.